Yo, what's shaking? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid. Like this video. If we say anything remotely informative or amusing, subscribe to the channel on our quest for 1 million subscribers. You got to get to 13,000 before you can get to a million. Leave your comments in the comments section. Do all of that stuff that we ask you to do on a daily basis. Today, we're talking Xavier Worthy, the Texas wide receiver position, and Anwar. We're a third of the way through camp, and it's kind of been quiet, I would say, on both the Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy front. The two best players in the program, the two guys that this team and this program will lean on more than any other over the course of 12 games this weekend. Yesterday, Steve Sarkisian meets with the media. Xavier Worthy's name pops up, and one of the interesting things about Worthy is that I think his coaching staff loves him more than the fans do. He is a guy that every day shows up to work. He grinds. He's about getting better. He's about maximizing his talent. And I think sometimes that stuff gets overlooked when we talk about Xavier Worthy because it seems so easy for him on Saturday to put up video game numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to take him for granted, Catch, just because he is so good. So when you start thinking about like stars in the sport, like you just expect Aaron Rodgers to go out and just throw 3 touchdowns in a game. And you don't think about, hey, that was probably kind of hard to be able to do that. Or you start thinking about like the receivers, in the sport, and start thinking about the best ones that are out there. I'm thinking, NFL, for, Devonta Adams. You just take for granted that Devonta Adams is really freaking good and really working hard at his craft. And I think that's the thing with Xavier. People don't ask about Xavier because I think they just take it for granted that, Xavier's going to do what Xavier does. And, it did come up, on, what was it? What are we recording today? Tuesday. So Monday, it did come up. And here was what is the interesting thing that Sark said about Xavier, Catch. He taught us talking about the how they've got, they do the thing where they do the catapult numbers, Catch, and they're kind of be able to, chart the explosive movements and, the top end speed and all the other kind of stuff. And he said Xavier's numbers are better than any other receiver in that room. He says, he goes, I think we had 18 receivers. He tops them all. So here's a guy, Catch, and, you and I love to give people their props and their flowers. This guy's a standout as a freshman. This dude is doing well in NIL. Be really easy for him to come in and cakewalk it and then just go, I'm good. And what Steve Sarkisian says is exactly the opposite. He still has a hunger and a thirst. I think if you're a Longhorn fan, you got to be excited about that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of season he has this year, simply because by the end of last year, his usage rate was out of control. I mean, Jordan Whittington gets hurt. The rest of the receiving room really didn't pick up the slack. And to his credit, on most Saturdays, Xavier Worthy was down for whatever was needed of him from a usage standpoint. If they needed him to have double-digit wide receptions, it was in his bag of tricks. This year, the wide receiver position, at least as things currently stand, right? Because injuries can change everything. But it seems like a wide receiver room that is packed with talent. They add in 3 guys from the transfer portal. Brennan Thompson arrives. I mean, the cavalry has arrived in the wide receiver room. What kind of numbers do you expect from Worthy this year? Do you expect similar numbers? Do you think he's a guy that builds on these numbers? We always talk about there's a lot of mouths to feed in this Texas offense. For me, the 2 mouths that need to be fed the most are Xavier Worthy and Bijan Robinson. I have no doubt that Bijan will get his carries. I think Xavier is one of those guys. They've got to go out of their way to make sure they involve early, they involved often. If we are going 1 or 2 quarters a game occasionally and he's not involved in the passing game for whatever reason, they've got to force the issue. He's just too good of a player. And in my mind, last season should be a stepping stone season. His numbers should go up from here. But that's easier said than done because Isaiah Nayor is going to want the ball, and they're going to want to get him the ball. And, whether it's Jordan Whittington or Tyreek Milton or any of the number of guys they have at that position, it might not be quite as easy as Worthy gets his stats this year because that's just what happens. What are you expecting inside of this Texas offense for him?
Well, this is going to be maybe a hot take, but I'm just going to go out there. I'm just going to put it out there on a limb. Did something similar on Monday. Man, I think Xavier is bona fide, and I think everybody else, and then I'd say everybody, Jordan Whittington is bona fide too, so I'm not going to take anything away from Jordan. I think everybody else, I got to take a wait and see approach too. For me, I think in theory, yes, Catch, there are a lot of mouths to feed, but the one thing we know about a Steve Sarkisian offense is Steve Sarkisian feeds his beast. Like we saw it in Alabama. Like he feeds the beast. We saw it here last year with Bijan. He feeds the beast. Like he's going to go with what he feels like his top guys are. And he's really big on, I'm going to make you beat my top guy. And, like Tom Herman, Catch, he would spread the ball around. Like we would have games where there'd be 10 people that caught passes in a game. I don't anticipate it being like that with Sarkisian. So, we looked at Xavier, he was at 981 last season with 12 touchdowns. I can easily see, 1,300 with potentially like 16 touchdowns for me, Catch. And here's my thing with Isaiah Nayor, right? And we've heard a lot of good things about him. Obviously, he balled out. He played well in Wyoming. I want to see him do it on this level, consistently week out and week in before I crown him, before I anoint him. Like him being able to do it at Wyoming is great. It's no doubt about it. I know what I'm getting with Xavier. Like I know exactly what box I can check. And here's the other thing I think is a key to that one too, Catch. Xavier was forced to play with one Casey Thompson, who was inaccurate at times, and who also had a thumb injury at other times. He also had Hudson Card. So if you look at Xavier's first two games, Louisiana was 1 reception for 34 yards, 2 receptions against Arkansas for 41 yards, right? And then Casey gets in and it starts to take off a little bit, 6 for 71, 5 for 100. TCU was, that was an injury game that we go back and find out was an injury game for Casey. And then he's, 9 for 261, 5 for 28, 4 for 115, 2 for 22, 14 for 152. So if he gets somebody who's getting him the ball consistently, I can easily just see, his numbers increasing.
Yeah, it's funny. You took me right where I was going to go next, which is his relationship with the Texas quarterbacks. I think the most when we look back on this offseason, it feels like this has been a 5-year offseason because it feels like forever ago when Xavier Worthy was putting Quinn Ewers into his avatar on Twitter and participating in the recruitment of potentially a change at quarterback. I mean, in terms of where his loyalties would be, Xavier Worthy wants the best possible quarterback play that he can find. And whereas Thompson, I thought, was critical towards his numbers a year ago, it didn't keep Xavier from wanting to play with a better player, involving himself into the recruitment of Quinn Ewers. And those two guys have built a relationship that extends away from the football field. They're roommates right now in college. I mean, I don't know how many Texas fans know that, but Xavier Worthy didn't just recruit Quinn Ewers. He's made a point to be kind of a right-hand man with him throughout the offseason. It's one of the things I keep waiting to hear, which is Ewers and Worthy have this relationship that is going to take both players to the next level. I think we will eventually get there. It's not something that you hear people talking about on a daily basis, though. That is still a connection, and I think some of this just has to do with the quarterback battle still kind of working its way out. Whoever wins will eventually be able to claim Worthy as their number one ally. But, I think at some point we both expect Quinn Ewers to win the job. And then that relationship between Ewers and Worthy on the field which I think a lot of people just assume will be easy. It's not just as simple as add water, instant connection. I think it's one of the things that over the course of the next couple of weeks has got to be one of the most important things that this offense figures out is how the number one quarterback is able to connect with the number one wide receiver constantly. And I think we somewhat took it for granted towards the end of last season because Casey Thompson sure made a point to figure out where Worthy was at all times. I'm not quite sure we're there yet, but eventually they need to get there.
I mean, Catch, you stay in the same house with somebody, it gets kind of awkward if you only gave him 2 targets, right? That's not going to be a comfortable house.
You're going to hear about
it on breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So there's something to be said for probably the connection that they have, obviously, and the friendship that they have. It goes a long way, just having that friendship, the familiarity, knowing that he can ball, but having that connection there. Casey was it. I don't think Casey really connected with guys on that level. Like I think Casey had good relationships, but I think Casey was also in Casey's world, at times as well. So, and look, Catch. I mean, I'd have to go back and I don't want to go back and watch every single game, but how many games? What would you say? At least 5 times that we saw Xavier have 15 yards of separation on the nearest defender, and it was overthrown. Yeah. I mean, at least 5, right? It was just you're like, oh snap, he's seriously. And so, if Quinn Ewers Catch is just a more accurate passer than we saw last season. And again, Casey may have other things that went into that. It's not a bash Casey thing. Obviously, I was president of Casey Thompson fan club, so there could have been the thumb, but there was also some accuracy issues involved. If Quinn is more accurate, then I think we start talking about, and I hate comparisons, but it just, because it's not always fair, but when you start thinking about what Sark had in Devonta Smith, then you start maybe going into that hemisphere of production, and because they're similar, obviously, in build and type and speed and everything to that effect. But I think if you get an accurate passer, then you start talking about those are the kinds of numbers like Devonta put up, as a junior Catch. It was, 1,256 yards, 14 touchdowns. The senior year, which was the big one, 1,856 yards and 23 touchdowns. It's interesting. So he was at Bama, but he didn't play much as a freshman. As a sophomore, he caught 42 for 693 and 6 touchdowns. So what's interesting, Catch, when it's all said and done, Xavier may in 3 years probably finish with better stats than Devonta did in all 4 of his years combined. But I think back to my original point, if Quinn is accurate in the passer that we believe he can be, then I think Xavier's numbers, increase. And, all these other guys that he's on the all Big 12 team list, I mean, I don't even think they would be in his same stratosphere.
We'll end this conversation with 3 quick buy or sell questions, all directed at you. Okay. Buy or sell number 1, you think he builds off of the yardage number from a season ago? You think he's good for 1,000+ receiving yards?
Buy. I'm thinking in the 1,300 range.
Buy or sell, you think he builds off of the 12 touchdown number? That's a much that was an incredible freshman number. Oh, yeah. You think he builds off of that and gets more than 12 this year?
Buy. I think I put him into about the 14 to 16 range.
My final buy or sell question, and this one may be the most difficult to answer. I'm with you, by the way, on both of those. Okay. Buy or sell, you think he's better at this stage than Devin Duvernay was in his final season at Texas, which I think would mean we would be calling him the best receiver that you've covered at Texas in the near decade that you've been here?
This stage versus Duvernay's senior season?
Correct.
Yeah, I would buy. You know why, Catch? Here's the reason why, and I got to go back and look at it. I don't think Devin Duvernay had an Oklahoma-type game. like Devin Duvernay had some good games, right? But that OU game catch was special. When you see a guy go for, what was it, 250? Well, I got to look up the, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. But whatever he finished with, there's someone screaming out the stat right now. They're all pissed off at us. Like, how do you not know this? Hold on.
You haven't memorized all of his stat lines from game by game. Come on, Anwar.
9 receptions for 261 and 2 touchdowns catch. I mean that I don't think Devin had a game like that. He had good games, but nothing to that effect. So I would buy on that one right now. And that's a hell of a question, by the way. I would love to hear your answer to that.
I think Xavier Worthy's going to finish his career as the best player at the wide receiver position that Texas has ever had, which means I think he's going to definitely be better than Devin Duvernay. The thing about Duvernay that was different about Worthy, that Worthy hasn't yet proven, is that by the time Duvernay was a senior, you could count on him for 10 catches a game. I mean, and Herman made a point, right? I mean, it was the way that offense was built, that if you were in the slot, you were the key man. We saw little Jordan Humphrey have big numbers. We knew that if you were in that position, the numbers would follow. Duvernay was more dependable and took more on his shoulders. And that's the thing that we're still waiting to see from Xavier Worthy, that I think he can. It's a matter of the offense flowing through him in such a capacity. But if you ask me to take one or the other, Duvernay as a senior versus Worthy as a sophomore, I would take Worthy as a sophomore. I think that he does more to scare the crap out of opposing defenses than Duvernay did. And that says a lot, because Devin Duvernay as a senior was a pretty special player and put up numbers that really only Jordan Shipley in Shipley's final season could match. I mean, he was exceptional. But yeah, I'm with you. I buy on all three of those questions, which is a long way to say both of us have wildly high expectations for Xavier Worthy going into this season. And along with Bijan Robinson, those two guys are the two guys that I don't feel like our expectations can be high enough. I feel like we're talking about elite of the elite players. And yeah, I think that over the course of the season, we will see growth and maturity out of Worthy that will show us just how much he's grown from what was an exceptional freshman season.
You know what's interesting, Catch, as we close out the conversation. So Duvernay finished his senior season with 106 receptions, which is clearly a lot. 1,386 yards and 9 touchdowns. But Catch, Xavier does it at 62 receptions for 981. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy that caught a lot of balls, but Xavier, with his explosiveness, Catch, damn near. I mean, we're talking about maybe 400 yards or so of separation with, what was it, like a 40% less receptions or something to that effect, in that ballpark, right? It's not exact math. So, if you add in 20 more percent, I mean, if he gets to 80 receptions this season, what does that number look like? And so it's interesting. Devin Duvernay may have had more receptions because Tom Herman is moving the ball down the field and was a little bit methodical at times, but then Xavier is so explosive that he may end up with less receptions and more yards and touchdowns just because that's how explosive he is.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's at this point for Xavier, it's just about volume. It's about every week being able to be counted on to produce volume. Because there were a few times last year. It will be interesting to see how teams defend Worthy this year versus last year. Because there were times at the end of the season where teams were doubling him. They were making it difficult because there weren't other players that could take the pressure. So if you could cut the head off of the snake, right? I mean, that was Xavier Worthy in the passing game down the stretch. There wasn't a lot left to pressure teams. I think that's where Sark would tell you he feels different about the offense this year. And better players on Isaiah Nayor and his presence on the field, along with Jordan Whittington, shouldn't just, yes, on paper, should take catches away from Worthy, but their presence on the field should mean one-on-one coverage and more space for him to operate in, which should allow for big plays and for, I think, a higher volume to occur. I think you'd rather have good players. Like at Alabama, Devonta Smith wasn't the only good wide receiver on the field, and he still caught a ton of passes. I think you'll see the same from Xavier Worthy. Ironically, more players potentially on the field to take away from him, I think will be the thing that helps give more passes to him during the course of the season. What do you guys think? What are your numbers? I'd love to see your personal projections in the comment section. Let us know what you think Xavier Worthy does this season statistically. Along the way, like the video, please. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel, and just know that we've got more video content coming your way throughout the day, throughout the week here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. But for now, for Anwar and myself, you guys have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Later.